We have a beautiful, wonderful library, a community library here in Seminole. And it's amazing every time I'm in there, all that is offered to everybody. We are part of, I say we because it's in Seminole, I'm in Seminole, so it's mine and it's yours. But it's also part of St. Pete College. And so we have little ones there, we have students there from many ages. We have the Friends of the Library. It's not just books anymore. So this fall, we got a new library director, and I thought maybe it might be a great idea for us, if you haven't met him, to meet him, and he can talk about himself, if you'd like, and what's going on in the library these days. So if you wouldn't mind putting your hands together for Director Glenn Ferdman. No more than however comfortable you feel. Thank you.
Can you also hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, good evening, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for coming out tonight to hear me talk about the library. And thank you, Michelle, for that lovely introduction. Michelle, by the way, is very modest, so in addition to her volunteer work here at the museum, she was also the chair of our library advisory board. And so it really is her library, in addition to everyone else's. And then Ray, of course, is the former library advisory board member who left our wonderful group to move on to city council. So anyway, that's a little bit about the local history, if you will, as far as people who are in attendance. So let me get this out of the way here. Okay. So were any of you who are here tonight present a couple weeks ago at the Kiwanis Breakfast Club? I was asked to present to that group. No? Good. This is essentially a rehash of that presentation, but a lot slower. Because when I was asked to present, the person who I was initially negotiating with said that I had 20 minutes to speak. So I prepared 50 slides to present in 20 minutes. And then when I got there, I spoke to a different person who informed me that I had 10 minutes. And I said, you know, I was actually told I had 20 minutes. And I have 50 slides. She said, okay, well, do your best. So although I was born and raised in Chicago, I did spend several years in Boston. So I went into Northeast Coast mode, and I just flew through the slide deck. And I just managed to get through. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Testing. Okay. It sounded like it went off. Hello.
Yes, it's back.
I'll keep it close to my face, see if that helps. All right. Now it's too loud. Is that better? Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry. Anyway, we did manage to get through the entire deck. So, you know, I can take this out. And I'm just going to try to project my voice. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yes? No? Want me louder?
Go, that's good.
Okay, good. I'll use my parent voice. Okay. So, let's go ahead, and what I want to do is just, before I advance to the next slide, I'm going to provide an overview of what I'll be talking about tonight, which I'm sure you'd be interested in knowing. And so, going to talk about first a little bit about myself, so you know who I am and by what authority, by what rights I have to speak to you tonight on this topic. Then I want to talk about, since after all we're in the Historical Society Museum, talk about the history of the library, much of which information about or comes from the Historical Society, so thank you very much. Then go over a little bit about the organizational structure of the library, and hopefully you'll still stay awake. Talk about our programs, collections, and services, our wonderful volunteers, and we have at least one in attendance tonight. The cooperative of which we're a part, consortium of which we're a member, and the state library. provides a lot of our services and funding. Also more about funding, how supporting the library. And then the last part I want to talk about is not specific to Seminole Community Library, but to talk about library trends. So sort of my recognition and in some cases predictions for the future of libraries. And then follow that with questions and answer, and hopefully do that all in 1 hour or less. Okay, so next slide, please. Thank you. It's Sue, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Sue, for
You're
the technical support in advancing the slides. Okay, so as I mentioned, I want to provide some biographical information about myself, or what I often refer to as my street cred, or why you should bother listening to what I have to say on this topic. So I am a Chicago native. Anybody from Chicago or the Midwest? Okay. Very good. So lifelong Cubs fan. Despite my best intentions, I tried once to stop following the Cubs. That lasted for a few years. But as I like to say, you can take the boy out of Chicago, but you can't take the Chicago out of the boy. And so, sure enough, a few years later, I find myself, against my better judgment, rooting for the Cubs. And then just happened to find myself in Boston the year that they finally won a World Series only after 108 years. So at least I did better than my uncle, unfortunately, who passed away, lifelong Cubs fan, who passed away the year before they won the World Series. At any rate, I spent most of my career in Chicago, but before I talk about my career, I want to mention that I'm a very proud father of 3 adult children, son, daughter-in-law, and new grandson who live in Chicago, a daughter who lives in Southern California, and another daughter who lives in Vancouver, British Columbia. So we're kind of coast to coast. And every once in a while, they humor their father by coming and spending time with me, which I'm very grateful. I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy from Beloit College, which is a small private liberal arts college just north of the Illinois-Wisconsin border. And then because the market for philosophers wasn't particularly strong the year that I graduated, wanted someone who will sit around and think all day and not necessarily come to any conclusions or certainly any practical applications. So I decided to go back to school and get a degree in something I could actually earn a living at. And due to a confluence of influences, both from my father, as well as a supervisor. One of my many work study jobs in college was working at the library. I did a couple of internships, the first of which was at the University of Illinois at Chicago Library in the summer of 1983. And then I followed it with another internship. That was a paid internship, by the way. First placement, they started a paid internship program that summer at the college. That was their very first placement. Followed it up that fall with another internship, unpaid, that the college referenced us. And by then I was hooked by the combination of looking things up, because it felt like sort of doing detective work. Back in those days, of course, everything was all paper-based. There wasn't any of this stuff. Very few libraries were even computerized back then. And a combination of that and working with the public, which really played to both of my strengths and interests. So I decided to go to library school, got a master's degree in library science from the Indiana University. Any Indiana natives or Indiana University alum? No? Okay. No Hoosiers in the audience? That's okay. And while there, I was there the last time Indiana University won the men's double NCAA basketball tournament. Anybody remember what year that was? Remember the name of the coach, the very famous coach who was famous for his time? Bobby Knight, exactly. So the year was 1987. I don't remember who they played, but I do remember that they won the game on the last second shot by a basketball player by the name of Keith Smart, I think his name was. And that night was very memorable for me because I was working in the the library school library that evening, and it was in March, because March Madness, of course. And that night, the weather was a combination of rain and sleet and snow. Visibility was down to a matter of feet. And just before I got off work, the game ended. So imagine, campus was going bonkers. So I got in my car, I'm driving back to my surplus World War II trailer, which was graduate student housing, which was a stone's throw from the library. But I'm in my car, and I'm driving very slowly, of course, because the conditions are really treacherous. And out of nowhere, a half-grade student, without warning, runs directly in front of my car, screaming his head up, "We won! We won!" And so I slammed on the brakes, and I came about this close to 10 feet an hour. So it was very memorable. Anyway, somehow I survived that ordeal. And I have been, subsequent to that, I got my library sciences degree and have been, for the past 30 plus years, I have been leading and managing libraries of all stripes, including academic libraries, public libraries, healthcare libraries, law libraries, and school libraries. I often liken myself to a library mutt, because there's virtually no library environment that I haven't worked. And that also includes for-profits, including a Fortune 500 company, as well as nonprofits. Seminole is my third municipality that I have worked for. And because, as Michelle alluded to, Seminole Community Library is a joint venture between the City of Seminole and St. Pete's College, it's the fourth college or university that I've worked for. So the combination of the fact that the Seminole Community Library is a joint venture, public and academic, really is well suited to someone with my background in both public and academic libraries. Throughout my career, I've also had the privilege of working in virtually every aspect and performing virtually every task there is to perform in a library. Beginning with paging books, shelving books, sorting books. I have shelved books in 4 classification systems, actually 5, I'll get to that in a minute. But, okay, pop quiz. I know everybody knows the Dewey Decimal System, right? But there are at least 2 other major classification systems in use in libraries today. Can anyone name another one of those classification systems?
Alphabetical.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, Michelle, because that is used, of course, in bookstores, and some libraries have actually started adopting that process, or that practice rather, because so many of the people who use libraries are accustomed to that. So forcing them to learn this arcane classification system that's only near and dear to librarians for the most part, but that's very interesting. So we'll say that's number 6. But one of the other major classification systems that's used in most college and university libraries, including the Seminole Community Library, because little known fact, we have a separate collection in the library that's part of the college. It's actually labeled the College Collection. And that collection is actually classified in that other major classification system, which is known as the Library of Congress, which is where that started. The other major classification system is the National Library of Medicine, which is how most collections in medical libraries, where I spent about 5 to 6 years of my career, how they're classified and how they're arranged. And then the last major classification is Superintendent of Documents. What the heck is that? Yeah. So the Superintendent of Documents is actually I believe it's a federal agency that publishes a lot of material, data, statistics, on a wide variety of topics. and they have depository libraries throughout the country that collect this material. And it's sent by the federal government, by the superintendent of documents, free of charge to those libraries. So one of my many work-study jobs was to write down the superintendent of documents classification number on superintendent of documents materials and then shelve them in our library. At the same time, I was also shelving books in that library that were classified. That library, although it was an academic library, used Dewey system. It so happens that Dewey and superintendent of documents treat the decimal completely differently. So one, for example, if anything after the decimal is considered a whole number, each digit is considered a whole number, the other one is considered as a different type of number. I should know the terminology better. But anyway, they're completely opposite. So sometimes the same day, I would be shelving both superintendent of documents materials and library materials, and I'd have to remember each time I'd have to make that mental shift of how each system is treating the decimal system differently. So it was a good thing I was young then, because I'm not sure my 60-plus-year-old brain at this point could probably handle that. Certainly not in the same day. But anyway, in addition to shelving materials, I also had experience in cataloging, processing, providing reference and information services, programming experience, virtually everything there is to do in the library. And of course, as a manager, as a director, supervising, budgeting, strategic planning, grant writing, fundraising, you name it, as well as facilities management. It's funny, the one class that they do not offer, at least in my experience, in library school, that's arguably the most important class, particularly for a library director, is in facilities management. It's my knowledge I don't know of any library school program that talks about that. But ironically, it's one of the things that as a director you spend a good deal of your time dealing with, because every building, regardless of how new or how not new it is going to have issues, whether it's with the HVAC system, the plumbing, the electrical, you name it. Our library is now going on its 21st year, is no exception, because, as some of you are probably aware, 20 years, a lot of the systems in that building, whether it's electrical, plumbing, HVAC, are reaching their end of life cycle. So, and this is no different than any other place that I've worked. I've dealt with all kinds of bursted pipes in the winter time and a variety of different issues. This building is no different than any other place that I've worked, whereas it requires spending a lot of time just dealing with facility-related issues. Our most recent one was the plumbing issue, which 3 of our bathrooms in the library were out of service for about a month and a half. So, but again, this is not unique to us. I'm not trying to cast aspersions at all on the library here. It's no different than any other library where I've ever worked. But that is something that does occupy a good deal of the library director's time, and ironically, it's one of the few things that you don't learn in your master's degree program. So hopefully you've got a good mentor, or you've got a good MacGyver in you, or do it yourself, or you know people, or you know how to get on Google and look things up, or you make the facility supervisor, the maintenance person, the custodian your best friend. Anyway, throughout my career, I've also had the privilege of being involved in approximately a dozen new library construction and renovation projects, including an award-winning new construction, brand new library in Chicago that had a very striking facade that was comprised of 720 individual interlocking glass pieces. It's on Michigan Avenue, just about a mile south of the Art Institute. I also worked on a renovation project on an historic Carnegie building in Boston. and then a variety of other renovation projects over the years. Those are very exciting to work on, as you can imagine. Time consuming, but very exciting. Okie doke, so I think we're ready to move on to the next slide. Okay, so now let's talk about the history of the Seminole Community Library. And I expect some or many of you will have some knowledge of that history and will remember some of the buildings and some of the locations we're gonna go through. Okay, and I should point out, as I alluded to earlier, much of this information is owing to two predecessors of mine ago, Mike Bryant. Anyone know Mike? Sure, of course. Mike was the library director worked at the library for I think 20 plus years, and was responsible for helping design and make possible our current location. So in preparing this presentation, I relied heavily on some of Mike's notes that he was kind enough to leave behind, as well as information that I found on the Historical Society's website. So if you notice any inaccuracies, just kidding. So that both those were invaluable sources of information for someone like me, who is actually celebrating today my six-month anniversary here as the Seminole Community Library Director.
All right.
Yay!
I started on August 28th. Okay, so without any further ado, if we can advance to the next slide. And we are going to go to the library's very first location. So again, pop quiz time. Who can tell me what the original name of the Seminole Community Library was? It was not called the Seminole Community Library when we opened the doors for the first time. There'll be another question on the quiz, but who knows what the original name of the Seminole Community Library was? Yes! Say it again. Oh, for crying out loud. See, that's another setting up. The answer is Seminole Ridge Community Library. And it was established in a cottage on what street?
Ridge.
Ridge Road.
Johnson.
Seminole Ridge.
Nope. First two locations were on the same drive. I just gave half of it away. Lake Drive. Lake Drive. And it opened with a collection of 3,500 books. It was a civic project by I want to ask you to answer this one.
Canal Seminole Women's Club.
Yes, Seminole Ridge Business and Professional Women's Club founded the library, which opened its doors to the public on July 12,
60.
JFK was not quite president yet.
62.
Not quite president
58.
yet.
57?
Nope, a little bit later, just before it was an election year. 1960. July 12, 1960. Yep. Okay, next please. All right, so then the Seminole Ridge Community Library moved to its second location, which was a former motor court motel. Can you tell? Does it look the part? So it looks like, I don't know, it's a part of me that kind of wonders and feels like it sort of looks like it resembles the Bates Motel. Am I alone in that? Anyway, which also resided on Lake Drive, and which reopened to the public on November 10th, 1965.
I think that building had books in their bathtubs.
Books in the bathtub. That would have been a great marketing opportunity.
That's another system for patio.
That's right. It's the bathtub classification system. Depending on whether, rises to the top or does it sink to the bottom. Okay. All right, I think we're ready to move on to our third location, which is the first library not on Lake Drive. And this was actually the first location that was designed to be a library. And it kind of looks the part, doesn't it?
Looks like a funeral home.
I was just about to say that, thank you for stirring me to mention that, but it was designed to be a library. It was located at 11000, is that how you pronounce it? Someone mentioned the previously mentioned Johnson Boulevard, exactly. And it opened its doors on February 15th, 1971. 2,400 square feet in size, and a collection which had grown to some 15,000 volumes. Interestingly enough, the land and construction costs were donated by community benefactors, local businesses, civic clubs, veterans organizations, and funds from Pinellas County. So now, fast forward almost 20 years, 1989, after more than 20 years of operation, Seminole Ridge Library Association was dissolved, and the library and all of its assets were transferred to City Seminole. Now, a year later, in 1990, the library became a charter member of the Pinellas Public Library Cooperative, which provided still does, a common library card valid at all member library locations across the county, allowing books and other materials to be borrowed freely amongst the various municipal libraries in the county. Then, in 1991, the Friends of the Seminole Library Organization was established. Okay, so that brings us to our fourth location, which you also should recognize. Exactly. The current home of Seminole City Hall, which of course used to be here
Yes,
before it moved to
correct.
there.
We repurpose, reuse, recycle.
It's a wonderful thing. And at that time, which was August 3rd, 1992, the library was renamed Seminole Community Library and moved to its fourth location at 9199 113th Street, present-day City Hall. Now, in 1995, the Library Advisory Board, of which Michelle is a member, or chair in fact, and the Library Youth Advisory Board, we now call the Teen Advisory Board, were established by a City Council resolution. So Ray, if you remember that, but you can impress your colleagues on the council as well with that information. Now, around 1997, discussions began between the city and the college about developing a shared library space on the campus, which I think was under construction then, in 1998, I think, when it was completed, if I'm not mistaken, the Seminole campus of St. Pete's College. So they began discussions at that time about a joint use facility. And then, several years later, in October 2000, the City of Seminole and St. Pete's College entered into a partnership agreement to design and construct a joint use, multi-purpose facility serving the needs of both the residents of the City of Seminole and the students and faculty of the college. Okay. And then, 3 years later, on August 10th, 2003, Seminole Community Library moved into its fifth and current location. And the library building itself, which you can see on the exterior there, was later named in honor of State Senator Dennis Jones, who helped to secure the state construction funds for the library, as well as the previous library facility across the street, as well as for other projects at the college. The library portion of the building, and I say that because the building is not the exclusive province of the library, but also houses a college bookstore, which was formerly a cafe. It was originally a cafe when the library first opened. It's now the college bookstore, as well as a bookstore for the Friends of the Library inside of the library. College classrooms, faculty offices, and then also in the, call it the partnership portion of the building, Congresswoman Luna's office, as well as the conference center. So it's a very large space. The library occupies the lion's share of it, but it is not the only use of that building. And the library portion features, in addition to the Friends bookstore, a separate children's area, a separate teen room, study room, 6 study rooms, quiet study area, very large area on the second floor for public access computers, lounge seating, a variety of seating, mix of seating types, tables and chairs, individual study carrels, and then and also housing a collection of approximately 90,000 books, DVDs, and CDs, serving approximately 200, I'll put it this way, it sounds better this way, 250,000 visitors per year. It is also the first such joint use facility between a municipality and a college in the entire county. Subsequent to the library here opening in 2003, there have been 2 additional joint use facilities that have opened up elsewhere in the county. Does anybody know where they are located?
St. Pete,
St. Pete, which location?
it's on Fifth Avenue North.
Fifth Avenue North,
Gibbs.
right, that's the
Gibbs.
Gibbs location, very good. And Michelle, do you know the other one?
Tarpon. Tarpon?
Not Tarpon. Tarpon is unique, it's because the museum is there, I understand, but it's not really a library, it's still a library, but we'll give that a close second, we'll call that the 4th-ish. But the 3rd location is Largo, very close to there. It's a library that has multiple locations.
Clearwater.
Clearwater, yes, Clearwater East. And what's interesting about that is each of the 3 locations is organized differently. For example, Seminole Community Library, all the library staff are city staff, city employees, City of Seminole employees. And I'll go in order of when they came online. St. Pete Gibbs, on the other hand, all the library employees are college employees. And at Clearwater East, there's a mix. In fact, what's really interesting about Clearwater East is that it's almost as if they painted an imaginary line down the center of the library. This half is college, and this half is city. In fact, they have one shared information services desk when you walk into that library, and on this side of the desk are college employees, and on this side of the desk are city employees. Now, it gets even better. They have a shared workspace in the center of the library, and again, as if there's an imaginary dividing line there, this side of the shared workspace are college employees, and this side are city. And when it comes to their collections, this side of the library are the college collections, and this side are the city collections. So glad I'm not working there. But it's interesting, though, how each one has been organized a little bit differently than the others. We were the first, and supposedly they used our library as the blueprint, whatever that means, to design the others. So I'd encourage you, if you have an opportunity, go visit those other locations. So St. Pete Gibbs, Clearwater East, and see for yourself. And then come back and tell me what you think. And I have my own opinions on the matter. Because I visited each of those locations and met with my peers colleagues at those locations. And it was very eye-opening in many ways. And in many ways, it also helped me appreciate the library facility, all the more the library facility that we have here.
We went to a magic show there one time.
At which location?
That
Here?
one.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment about programs and the innovative programming that we're doing. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on. And so now we're just going to whip through a bunch of slides depicting the interior and a couple of exterior shots of the library, for those of you who haven't been there or haven't been there recently. So this first one is of the circulation desk. Okay, and next slide, please. And then we have, this is a shot looking towards our children's area, which, by the way, was the children's area, which is, as you can see, is designed to look like a castle. I'll have more shots of that in a moment. But it was designed by Creative Designs, I believe is the name of the company. It was located in Pinellas Park. And they have actually done similar installations at several other libraries in the county, including a beach-themed design in the children's area in Dunedin. And then there's also what was the other one? I have it in my notes. One of the locations, there could be more that I know of, which is a similar sort of nautical theme at, it might be St. Pete Kids, I can't recall off the top of my head. But anyway, let's continue, please. Another shot of the children's area. It's delightful. What's really beautiful about it is to see the look of joy and excitement on the faces of the children, particularly those who are entering the space for the first time. It's like entering, the magical kingdom. I mean, it's just like, fantasy world come to life. The next slide, please. Yeah, so if you haven't been there, encourage you to come visit. So now this is looking towards the entrance of the library from the children's area in the direction of the entrance library. And then on the left-hand side, the middle of the screen at the top, you can see the entrance to the Friends bookshop. As I mentioned, it's actually inside the library proper. So next slide, please. Okay, here is the lounge seating on the first floor with that beautiful window wall, which a view into the nature center on the campus. So beautiful views out the windows there. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to move up to the second floor. This is a view from behind the information desk, looking towards that same window wall. As I mentioned, that's the area where we have the publicly accessible computers. And then just past that is the lounge seating area. Next slide, please. And this is our table seating area on the second floor, and just past that our young adult collection. And then you see the glass wall there, that's the separate teen room. Next slide, please. Here is our quiet study room, the self-contained enclosed space. And here's a close-up of the lounge seating area on the second floor and a view of the window wall. Next slide. Our periodicals also on the second floor. And a couple exterior shots, and the last one, of course, we have to, now you have to have the ubiquitous drone shot. Okay, so now we see photos of the library. Now I'd like to move on and spend a few minutes talking about how the library is organized, or various divisions, if you will. And we have four of them. The first of which, next slide, please, is our technical services division. It's where the proverbial sausage is made in the library. In our case, it would be where the books and other materials are cataloged and processed before they wind up on the shelf. Next slide, please. Here's a photo of our intrepid part-time cataloger par excellence, Patty, who's been with us for quite a while, actually. And just to give a little self-promotion plug, we're one of the few libraries actually left in the cooperative that actually has a cataloger, a trained cataloger, cataloging materials for the libraries. And what's the big deal? Everything's online, and da-da-da-da. And while it's true that a lot of cataloging information and data now comes from the publishers, however, There are some who argue that the quality of the cataloging data provided by the publishers is not necessarily as good a quality as a professionally trained cataloger as we have. And so you say, big deal, what's the significance of that? The significance of that is when you're using the catalog, now the online, I was about to say the card catalog, the online catalog to look up something, your ability, your success at finding something that you want is going to be directly tied to the quality of the cataloging. Because how the item is cataloged, the access points, the subject headings, and so on, is going to determine how easy it is for you to find material that you're looking for on the shelf, as well as assigning, our previous conversation, back to classification schemes. The classification number plays an important role because that determines the location on the shelf. You say, big deal, I just look it up on the catalog. But guess what? I'm guessing there are probably some of you that enjoy browsing, right? Show of hands, does anybody enjoy browsing through the shelves, right? Yeah, so if you're browsing the shelves, you want to have like-minded books, if you will, especially if you're talking about nonfiction, grouped together on the shelf so that you can find books on the same subject. So anyway, little self-plug promotion that we're doing it the right way, and we're going to continue to do it the right way. As long as we have the council continues to fund us at a level that we can maintain a professional level cataloger. So we're very grateful for that. So next slide, please. Come to circulation services is our next division. Whoops, back one slide, please. Okay. Circulation division, of course, is where our materials get checked in and out, where you get your library cards, and that sort of thing. So there are frontline staff, the people who you see when you first walk into the library. Okay, next slide, please. Next up is our youth services division, which, of course, as the name implies, serves the needs of interests of children and their families, caregivers, which also includes, of course, when I say children, I mean everything from every individual child from birth through teenage years. And we have books and other materials and programming for each of those different categories, everything from infants to elementary school kids to tweens and teens, as well as now the group that no one really quite knows where they reside. And we're referring to the young adults. Are they really more like teens? Are they just older teens? Or are they adults learning how to, and this is a verb now, learning how to adult? Right? And depending on who you talk to, you'll get different responses of how you define and where they belong, young adults. So, okay, next slide. All right. So, youth services, a couple more, just a little bit more information about this beautiful space that they have. Here it is. So this is the note that I was looking for. Yes, it was St. Pete Gibbs, as well as Dunedin, that also have these wonderful installations designed by Creative Arts Unlimited, is the name of the company in Pinellas Park that designs and installs these wonderful themed installations. So I just want to draw attention to that. And next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we provide a variety of programs for children of all ages. So here's a couple photos of different programs that we offer, whether it's baby time, story times, giggle, wiggle, and sing, baby sign language, which we do in partnership with the county. A whole host of programs, as well as separate programs for tweens and teens. We recently had a program for, well, did you know, by the way, that Oreos now come in about 12 different flavors? I did not know this until recently when we did a program. It was a blindfolded taste test for tweens on different Oreo flavors. And boy, did these kids take it seriously. I'm telling you, they had a blast. And the looks on their faces, we took photos when they were blindfolded. And constantly trying to figure out, is this caramel, is this lemon, is this, So a variety of programs for kids of all ages, and we try to make them specific to their age group, something that will be of interest and exciting for them. And so next slide, please.
You guys do another one, let me know.
And they do it for adults, actually. And so, again, we have this, because we have this beautiful nature preserve just outside of our doors, we also do programming that utilizes and takes advantage of that on occasion as well. So here's some photos of past programs that we've done in the nature preserve for children and their families. So next slide, please. And so I mentioned programs for elementary school kids. Okay, next slide. And then teens. Don't have any slides of the tweens, but we do programs for them. That's more of a more recent thing. Next slide, please. And occasionally we do field trips too. Okie doke. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next division, which is our Adult and Information Services, aka Reference Services. Goes by a variety of different names. And so that division serves the information and educational needs and the interest of the adults in our community. The next slide, please. And then in addition to books, we also offer a wide assortment of online or digital resources accessible from the library and any internet-connected device, in most cases available 24/7 from any location, which include your ebooks, your audiobooks, periodical and research databases. We also have streaming movies and music services. In fact, we have a streaming movie service called Canopy that provides access to, it's an award-winning documentary series. And you can stream that to your phone, any internet-connected device. If you have a smart TV, you can download the Canopy app and then stream movies from the Canopy using your library card directly to your smart TV. I think we have it configured for 5 free downloads a month.
Wow.
So all with your library card. You're paying for it anyway through your taxes, so why not take advantage? And these databases are provided via contracts at the cooperative level, so the Pinellas Public Library Cooperative, as well as some come from the state, as well as some individual databases that come from our budget, from the Seminole, City of Seminole budget. Okay, next slide, please. And of course, with the proliferation of various devices, our job has increasingly become that of assisting people with the use of their devices, whether it be computers in the library or increasingly devices that people bring into the library and want help using, whether it's their smartphone. Somebody got them a smartphone for Christmas, they want to know how to use it, or a tablet. And so we do offer a variety of tech classes as well as one-on-one sessions for folks to help them learn, navigate how to use a variety of technology. Yes, sir.
I remember exactly when Geezers, Gizmos, and Geeks was started.
Yes.
And that was the most incredible program I ever saw in a public library. And I went home to Lexington, Kentucky at that time, and I got them to adopt the same program. Absolutely genius. Instead of wasting those kids opening up cardboard boxes, they were able to sit down and do one-on-one with geezers like me, and it was just a wonderful. Now it's called, I think, Gizmos and
Gizmos,
Gadgets.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. And
But
so,
that was just marvelous program.
yeah, and so what this gentleman, sorry, what is your name, sir?
Otis Taylor.
Otis. What Otis is describing is a program that utilizes teen volunteers, because of course they're all born Gujarati, right? So we think anyway. And on Saturdays from 1 to 2 p.m., they provide one-on-one instruction. You bring your own device, sit down one-on-one with a teen, and they will help you walk you through how to use that device, or if you're having an issue or challenge. And then when they get stuck, the teen volunteers, because they do on occasion, then they will refer you to one of our librarians upstairs on the second floor. This has happened, so we have a great partnership. They'll do a warm handoff. The kids are great. The vast majority of the time, they're able to provide and help people who need the assistance. So, yeah, it's a great program. Why not have the kids that know arguably know the technology the best, helping folks who need it. So it's very much a win-win. So other things we assist folks with that are related to that, increasingly employers are now requiring people to apply for jobs online. A lot of people don't have those skills. They come to us for help. How can I create an online, complete an online application? Or how to create a resume? Or I need to email something to somebody. How do I create an email account? So we spend a large percentage of our time helping folks with these basic kinds of issues. It's very different than librarianship going back 20, 25 years ago. So which is interesting because, of course, certainly when the internet became publicly available, there were all kinds of prognostications about how the internet was going to put librarians and libraries out of business. Guess what? How did that work out? Well, actually, you know what? It's actually increased our business and increased the demand for librarians and actually increased the number of library-related positions because of the need to help sort and sift and manage and navigate and make sense of all that information that's out there and help people access it on the various devices. So I'm sure they're going to be saying the same thing about artificial intelligence, that it's going to also put libraries and librarians out of business. But if history is on our side, it would suggest that the opposite is the case. That, with every advance in technology comes the commensurate need to teach people how to use it. Unless they, develop technology that is so intuitive that it doesn't require any human intervention, and that might happen, maybe not in our lifetime, but who knows. But until then, we're still going to need people to be intermediaries, and traditionally, those people are librarians. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of the game because that's more for the trend section of the presentation. I'm tipping my hat. So next slide, please. And then speaking of programs, we offer a variety of programs for all ages. Everything, from birth through seniors and everyone in between, including book clubs, traditional book clubs, discussion groups, crafting events, movie matinees, musicals, concerts, all of which are free and open to the public, free of charge. And we're constantly on the lookout for new programs and activities. In fact, I was in touch just yesterday with someone from the University of Florida's Extension Service, the Agricultural Division Extension Service, with their Master Landscaping Program. Anyone familiar with that program? It's a wonderful program. Their office is located right over here at the Botanic Gardens, and you can make an appointment to speak with the Master Gardener, learn all about Florida friendly landscaping, as I did the other day as a new homeowner. So we're going to have, and they have a whole speakers bureau. So we're going to, and a whole series of topics that they present and they lecture on. So we're going to bring one of their speakers into the library to talk about Gardening 101. And they have a whole series of different lectures. So we're going to start off with that one and see if there's interest. Okay, moving on, please. Okay, so, I can't talk about the library without putting in a plug for Library Card. As I said, you're already paying for the service, so why not take advantage? All it takes is to get your own library card, show up to the library, present a photo ID. It's as simple as that. And with that card, you have access to not only books, music CDs, DVDs, but all that whole host of those electronic and online resources I mentioned, including streaming music, videos, etc. And we'll teach you how to use them too, if you need help, how to access those materials, ebooks, audiobooks, movies, music, etc. We will show you how to do it. It's really not that difficult once you learn how. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so cannot not talk about funding. And so some of you may be wondering, well, you know, this is all wonderful, I've alluded to it, but still, some of you may have questions, but how do you pay for all this stuff? So the answer is that our budget actually comes from 3 primary sources, actually 4. The first of which, the lion's share, about 70% of our budget comes from the City of Seminole's operating budget. Funds from which come largely, of course, from property taxes. About 23% comes from the state of Florida, which is a line item in the state budget, state aid, which is administered via the County Library Cooperative. So the cooperative actually cuts those checks that come from the state, that come from the state library via the state to the respective libraries, member libraries in the cooperative. About 6%, thank you very much, come from the Friends. And that's a significant portion. The Friends raise about $70,000 per year, which is an astronomical figure for a community of our size. In fact, this is the 4th Friends group that I have been involved with in my tenure, and it is by far the most successful when it comes to fundraising of any Friends group, bar none, that I've been involved with, including libraries that are serving a population that are 4 times the size of the City of Seminole, just to give you some context. So they do a phenomenal job for us, and we're very grateful, which represents about 6% of our funding. And then finally, about 1.5% of the funding comes from the college, which is part of the agreement that we have with the college. Okay, next slide. And then, of course, just like the Historical Society, we are very dependent on our volunteers. They are very critical to our overall success of the library operation because despite the variety of funding sources, it's not enough. This is not to cast aspersions on the library in the City of Seminole, not at all. Every library is in this situation. No library can afford to do everything that they want to do without additional assistance from the outside, usually from the Friends group, or for those libraries that are fortunate they have a foundation that provides funding. We are no exception. As well as not only just funding, but also for doing the work of the library, helping us shelve materials, helping us run programs. Next slide, please. And then helping us with the manage and guide the library operations and policies, we rely and are very indebted to the Library Advisory Board. It's a group of 5 individuals. 2 represent the college, 2 represent the city, and as Ray knows very well, we have the joint use seat that Ray held until he joined the city council, which is presided over by our chair, currently Michelle, our fearless leader.
Yay.
We're very grateful for her ongoing commitment and support. And they advise us on matters of policy and management of the joint use facility. Next slide, please. And then, of course, our Friends group. Separate 501c3. Some people aren't aware of that, but it's actually, they're a separate nonprofit organization whose mission is to support the library, provide material support from the library, and they do this by selling books in the shop, as well as they also have additional spaces just outside of the shop where they sell books and other materials, as well as silent auctions, special library sales, themed library sales throughout the year, and then funds are raised by the Friends go to support library programs and events, as well as other material support, including furniture and other needs. So very grateful to the Friends for their ongoing support. And then we also, as I mentioned, we have a teen advisory board, and they, which is open to teens in grades 8 through 12, and they provide input into library programs and events. They also help staff to, during our outreach events, to staff our library table. For example, at the Field of Screams event. We've also tabled here in the past in the park for the City Seminole Music in the Park events. And they also provide homework help and for gizmos and gadgets as well. Next slide, please. So here's a shot of our team volunteers in action in a variety of different capacities: homework help, gizmos and gadgets, and shelving. And then next slide, we also have adult volunteers who help us shelve materials as well. Okay, so moving on, very quickly we'll talk about some of our cooperative consortium arrangements. So next slide, as I mentioned, we're a founding member of the Pinellas Public Library Cooperative. It's a group of 14 libraries, practically every municipality in the county with a few exceptions, in 26 locations throughout the county. And your library card is good at every one of those 14 member libraries, those 26 locations. We have a shared catalog. Material can be requested and shipped to any one of those locations, depending on your convenience. Okay. In addition, I should point out they have other services. For example, the Library Cooperative for the deaf and blind individuals, as well as a very popular museum pass program. Anyone know about or aware of the museum pass program? Yeah, a few free museum passes at each member library that are also available. We're also a member of the Tampa Bay Library Consortium, which is coast to coast. And over that section in orange is the coverage area for the consortium, which was established in 1979. It's a non-profit cooperative that is comprised of more than 120 libraries of all types, so public, academic, school, and specialized. And it is one of 5 quote-unquote multi-type regional library cooperatives in the state. And it provides courier service, so when the books that are shipped back and forth to various libraries is provided, that service is provided by the consortium. They also provide and host a wide variety of professional library workshops and seminars, very high quality. Also, an interlibrary loan service. So, for example, if you're looking for a book or the material that's not held in the cooperative collection, we can request it from libraries outside of the cooperative. That's called interlibrary loan. Services provided by TBLC, as well as a statewide Ask a Librarian virtual library service. So go online, chat live with the librarian, and ask a question. Google not providing the answer for you? We've got help for that. Chat with the librarians. Ask a librarian. Okay, and then lastly, Florida Division of Library and Information Services, which is actually a division of the state, whose mission is to promote and enhance library records management and archival services for the state of Florida. And specifically, the library division operates the State Library and Archives of Florida, second branch of the Library Archives in the Capitol Building, Florida Records Management Program, including the State Records Center, the Bureau of Library Development, which provides the state aid that I mentioned earlier. That comprises about 23% of our budget. Thank you very much. Federally funded LSTA grants for a variety of different purposes, as well as library construction grants, continuing education programs, and digital collections, including there's also historical and archival digital collections that are provided and maintained by the state library. So if you didn't know about those,
you can even go into that place as a visitor. You can go in.
yes, you
It's
can visit in
phenomenal
person.
amount of stuff that they have.
So you can visit in person. You can also access them online. So I think those of you who have a historical bent and interest would find those collections of interest. So Division of Library and Information Services. And those, oh, here we are. Just look further in my notes. Those digital collections also provide resources such as homework help, health research, career, job, and small business assistance, a library reference, a collection of reference, electronic reference books, and this is what I was trying to remember, Florida Memory, which provides free online access to archival photographs, videos, maps,
Wow.
audio recordings, and more. Florida Memory. So if you just Google Florida Memory, you can access the data. Okay, next slide, please. We're getting close to the end here, so hopefully I'll be quick. All right, so people often ask, what can they do to support the library? So here's some of the things that I will often tell them in response. Number one, volunteer. Sorry, Michelle.
It's okay.
Volunteer in the library and the Historical Society. Make a monetary gift to the library, friends of the library, as well as the Historical Society. Partner with us and the Historical Society. Help spread the word to your circle of friends, family, acquaintances, and associates. Like us, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, or as my daughter says, Insta. Use the library, because that data helps determine, believe it or not, the funding allocation that we receive from the state aid that we get, that 23%, is partially based on usage statistics. So the more people use the library, the more money we get. Who knew? And attend our programs and events. And you can subscribe to our monthly programming e-newsletter, which will come every month in your inbox automatically, by going to the library's website, which is www.myseminole.com/website/library, or you can just Google Seminole Community Library, and you'll find links there where you can sign up very easily to our e-newsletter. Okay, home stretch, ready? Okay, now's the fun time. Library trends. This is where Glenn makes predictions. You know, I turn Spanguli and I look into my crystal ball and I try to imagine what is the future hold for libraries. And this is partly based on real data, partly based on my experience, and partly based on my intuition, if you will, on what the future holds. Okay, number one. Recovery from the pandemic. Duh. So maybe not duh, but libraries are still recovering from the pandemic in terms of, you look at the numbers of visitors, our circulation, still have not quite come back to pre-pandemic levels. And this is true of every library across the country for that matter. So it's a nationwide trend. Those numbers are slowly coming back. And what are some of the reasons for that? Well, some people have been reluctant to return to in-person visits to their library out of concern for their health or, similar or related reasons. Others who, when libraries were shut down across the country at the beginning of the pandemic, turned to ebooks and audiobooks. We saw a significant and exponential increase in the use of ebooks and audiobooks during the pandemic. Some people really liked that, and they decided, you know what? Maybe I don't have to visit the library in person anymore. I can just, use this thing. Okay, that's fine. We're happy that they're doing that. But every 3 years, we know we're going to see them because their library card expires. And then hopefully we can hook them back into visiting us again in person. Okay, number two. Okay, so collections. What do I mean by collections? No, it doesn't mean that, okay, you haven't paid your bill and now we're going to send you a dunning letter. When we refer to collections of books and other materials that we circulate to people. So I'll get right to the point. This is something that I often get asked. No, Virginia, books are not going away anytime soon. Okay, can we just get that out of the way? What's interesting is, on the academic side, they have done several surveys in recent years of traditional college-age students between the ages of 18 and 25, and an overwhelming percentage of them, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 67% in both cases, the surveys with which I'm familiar done in recent years, have indicated a strong preference for a printed textbook versus an ebook version of the same textbook. These are kids between 18 and 25. Again, you know, natural born digerati preferring physical books. Now, what's interesting is, despite the fact that ebooks and audiobooks saw exponential increases during the pandemic, we get it, it's understandable, those increases have started to level off. The pendulum is starting to slowly swing back towards print. Print utilization, which is starting to go up in certain places, not everywhere, but in certain places. Books not going away anytime soon. Okay. What else about collection? Digital content. So the demand for ebooks and audiobooks will continue to remain strong. Will continue that exponential increase that we saw during the pandemic? I doubt it. Unless AI comes up with something that's so superlative that's going to really drive the demand again. But I think it will continue to remain strong. What we also will see, I believe, is an increase in streaming content. You know, streaming movies, music, as well as other content potentially in the future. We'll also probably continue to see legal wrangling over the definition of copyright, and the rise of independent publishing, which is representing a challenge, increasingly a significant challenge to traditional publishers, which are losing their historic stronghold or stranglehold, if you will, on what gets published. As more and more people have the ability to publish independently. In fact, some of the New York Times bestsellers, current New York Times bestsellers, started off as independently published books. So think about that for a minute. And they got so popular that the traditional publishers could no longer afford to look away and started signing these people to contracts for big bucks. So I think we'll continue to see that. Oh, and then another thing, speaking of artificial intelligence, how many of you know that books have already started being published by AI, being authored by AI, in some cases co-authored, and sometimes exclusively. Sometimes the authors are upfront about that, and will admit to that, and tell you and share that information with you, but not always. We'll no doubt see more of that in the future. And then, as you probably are aware, the artistic community, whether it be movie producers, screenwriters, performing artists, musicians, are increasingly up in arms. And then, you know, the strike in Hollywood that went on forever,
Right.
A lot of it was about trying to come to terms with the use of artificial intelligence. So they're very concerned about that and about its impact on their profession and their careers. And so we haven't quite seen yet, anyway, the same level of concern in the world of literature, but I think it's probably coming soon. So stay tuned. And then next, technology, yes. Of course, we can expect to see technology continue to grow and change. And as mentioned, requiring libraries to keep pace so that we can continue to provide instruction and know-how to folks who come to us for assistance in how to use this new technology. We will probably continue to see, as we have very recently, questions about the future of social media amidst legal challenges and concerns about social media's impact as we become increasingly aware that it's not necessarily neutral and benign in its impact. So I think that we're going to continue to see impact to that, particularly in the short term. And next, please. Programming and services, yes. So although in recent years, and certainly since the pandemic, we have seen, as I mentioned, fewer visitors to the libraries compared to pre-pandemic times. However, what has continued to grow during that time, and probably will for the foreseeable future, my prediction anyway, is the number and variety of library programs. As libraries continue to innovate, to partner and collaborate with other entities, civic groups, organizations, government agencies, and individuals to offer a wide variety of programs and events based on the need and the demand.
including things like libraries are offering courses and workshops in health information literacy, financial literacy. I mentioned, the extension program, they come and provide workshops and lectures on gardening, tax assistance, legal assistance, as well as libraries increasingly contracting with and hiring full-time social workers to address the need for those individuals who are homeless, experiencing, grappling with substance abuse and behavioral health issues. In fact, when I was in Boston, we were the second library in the state to hire a social worker back in 2017 to provide for the needs of that growing community, for that growing population. Okay, next up, design. What do I mean by that? So, design of library spaces. So, a relatively recent trend in the library world is to design spaces based on how users interact with the space. Like what? And so, what that means is that actually libraries are increasingly hiring people with anthropology backgrounds. Why? Believe it or not, like going into the field to study the ways that people are using and interacting with library spaces to get data and information to help design library spaces, furniture, and so forth to meet the needs of how people are interacting and using those spaces. So they're increasingly observing people, they're surveying them to find out what is their preferred method to interact with library spaces so that we can design spaces that meet the needs of those users. As opposed to, I'll give you an extreme example on the opposite end. Have any of you had the privilege of visiting the new Seattle Public Library that was built about 15 years ago? Okay. So the Seattle Public Library is an example of a community hiring a starchitect, a superstar architect, who's looking to make a name for themselves by designing a state-of-the-art building that looks fabulous to the eye. Sound good? Well, from an aesthetic standpoint, it does. If you're looking for a tourist attraction, it's wonderful. However, in many cases, these buildings, what they lack is what they have in design, they lack in terms of functionality. So, to wit, the Seattle Public Library is built. Has the exterior is an interlocking lattice network of steel that when the sun shines in the few days in Seattle that has sunshine, I know this because I lived in Portland for 4.5 years. When the sun shines through that lattice network, it creates a shadow, an image of that lattice network on the floor or on anything that you happen to be reading. And I know this for a fact because when I visited there and I took a book and I sat down to read, the sun happened to be out that day and shone through the ceiling, through the roof of the building, and created this lattice pattern on the book that I was trying to read. Besides that, there have been articles after the building was constructed about, from the library staff perspective, on how challenging it is functionally to work in that space. So that's an extreme example of the opposite. But the trend is to get away from that. Libraries have learned fortunately, many libraries have learned, and library leaders have learned the hard lessons of that. Try and get away from that, but rather design spaces that really work for their users. And hence, part of this process is, believe it or not, hiring people with anthropology backgrounds to, study how people interact with spaces for people. And increasingly, studies are showing that for a significant, or a certain percentage, I should say, of the population, the library serves as, in many cases, in some cases, I should say, as their only social outlet. For some people who live alone, or whatever the circumstances is, they come to the library for social connection and contact with other people. Whether it's with library staff, whether it's with other users. So there's been increasing recognition over the years of the library's role in building and sustaining community. And so that can all be neatly summed up as the library as a third space. Okay, and then lastly, finally, cannot talk about trends without talking about the impact of artificial intelligence. Everybody's talking about it. It's either our savior or it's our, destructor. Some people say it's either or, it's both. Who knows? Time will tell, depending on who you listen to. Certainly, though, in practical ways, as far as its impact in the library world, we are already seeing libraries that have deployed robots for wayfinding. And I'm not talking about little robots that stand on a countertop that you can enter. I'm talking about robots that stand, let's say, about yay high, that are completely mobile, that you can come up to and interact with and say, hey, where is the mystery section? Where's the science fiction section? The robot will say to you, follow me, please, and it will escort you to the requisite section. It's already happening. And so I imagine that as AI and robotics continue to advance, we'll find increasing applications in the library world for things like cataloging, perhaps, reader's advisory. Hey, I'm looking for a book on, so maybe in the future you'll be interacting with artificial intelligence. Certainly something that's possible and probable. I think it's just a matter of time. And then, as I mentioned previously about the prognostications about the internet doing away with libraries and librarians, I'm sure we'll see similar predictions about the demise of libraries and librarians and libraries with the growth of artificial intelligence. But again, if history passes any precedent, history is on our side, and more likely than not, at least for the foreseeable future, hopefully in our lifetime, the growth of artificial intelligence will create more demand for human intermediaries to assist people in the use of these technologies, to help them get online and access the information that they need. And with that, I'm going to conclude. I'm sorry for going over, but I hope you found the information informative and educational, as we were talking about earlier, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one question.
Yes?
Clearwater Library, they currently have a scanning service that will do 300 images a month for free.
Yes.
Okay, do you envision being able to provide that type of service here at the Seminole Library?
So we currently have scanning capabilities at the library. They're not free of charge. I don't know that, in order to do that, we've taken the infusion of additional funds for us to be able to provide that type of service for free, as well as to be able to staff that. I'd love to be able to do that. I think there would be an interest in that, and that's something that potentially could be folded into. We have an innovation lab in the library. It's underutilized because, again, of staffing. We have actually instruction librarian at the college side who runs that, but he's very busy visiting other campuses, providing a variety of programs and services and instruction there. That space, unfortunately, isn't open very much. But if we were able to ramp up our capacity, I could very well see that innovation, that being a service that could be folded into the innovation lab, and potentially something that could be staffed someday by volunteers.
You may want to collaborate more with the college for their students to be able to do that. For example, USF does a lot of the digitizing for the Gulf Beaches Historical Museum, and it's all done for free for the students.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just had a meeting 2 weeks ago with Chad, who was the instruction librarian, and he is the founder of the Innovation Lab, about recruiting students and other volunteers to work in the Innovation Lab. So actually working toward making that happen.
Good. Thank you.
Glenn, this is incredibly informative. And I'm sure if anybody else has any other questions, we'll do one or two more, and then certainly get up, stretch your legs, have some refreshment. And Glenn, thank you very